And I'm Tally. Excited today to have Jon and Cliff with us. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah,
It's a
thanks for
pleasure to be
coming
here.
all the way from your campsite to join us in our little studio today.
Yeah, their regular campsite actually. Right?
Ooh.
Yeah,
That's right.
We go every weekend.
I love that. And that's exactly how I met them, Allie. You know,
Yeah, that's how you know them from
Yeah.
camping.
from camping. You know, that's
That's
where it all started.
Cedar Hill State Park.
Exactly. And we were the only Airstreams in that row area, I guess, that section as well too at the time. Probably.
That's right. That's
Oh,
right. And we've seen more Airstreams there,
Ah,
and of course yours was similar to our first one.
right.
So when I saw walking the dogs,
Right.
I'm like, well, I'm just going to say hello.
Yeah.
And Airstreamers tend to gravitate toward one another, so
Yeah.
it was great to connect.
It's kind of it's part of the culture.
Yeah.
So and that's actually written in some rules somewhere.
You have to meet
Some
other
people
Airstreamers.
take it and accept it
Yeah.
and say hello,
Yeah.
and others are like, okay, thanks, bye. And they close the
Kind of
door.
like owning a Jeep, right?
Like
Yes,
a Jeep, right?
yeah.
Because all the Jeep owners, we park
It's a
next to each
culture.
other unconsciously in parking lots.
Yeah.
And
Or being an Aggie.
Or being an
you know,
Aggie.
That's right. Yes.
And if you
No,
happen to
that's
be an
true.
Aggie who
That's
has a Jeep who tows an Airstream,
Yeah.
Oh.
See, you're just
yeah.
missing that third
It's a
element.
triple
now.
I used to have
connection.
a
Sold
Jeep.
your Jeep,
I
yeah.
sold my Jeep. So,
Oh.
yeah.
You were the trifecta, and now you're
Yeah.
just.
Oh,
just
well. I'm okay.
Well, we are really excited to have you guys here with us. One of our main topic for the season this year is rejection. So we want to kind of start off with asking, have you ever been rejected or rejected someone else?
You know, this was a great question that you sent us in advance to think about.
Yeah,
And
it's one
at
of those we gotta
first,
get an idea.
I said to Cliff, have you ever been rejected? What kind of a question is that?
I love it.
And we actually both thought about it and spent some time wrestling with it. And one of the things we wanted to share with you and with your audience is that our experience of deep rejection in our lives had little to do with our being gay and everything to do with our being Catholic priests.
Wow.
Because when we experienced a deep form of rejection, it was when we announced that we were leaving the ministry. It wasn't when we announced that we were coming out. And so the rejection we experienced was a different kind of rejection. It wasn't tied to our being gay. It was tied to our being Catholic priests and leaving the ministry. And we both experienced a level of rejection from our family that was very painful.
Yeah.
And so that came as a surprise to us. And when we started discussing it, it really was a revelation
Yeah.
that we both had experienced that deep kind of rejection for a different reason. And I think that ultimately it did circle back to being gay.
Mm-hmm.
But at that first level, it was, well, because we had made a commitment to being Catholic priests and we decided to leave the active ministry and we decided to become a couple. And so the first level of rejection was because we left the ministry, and how could you stop being priests when you made that commitment?
Yeah. So, Ellie,
Wow.
this is exactly
Yeah.
Why-
I know we're gonna get into that more. Yeah.
This
but-
is exactly why we needed to share your story. You know,
Right.
both of your stories. So.
And the other thing is that when we were talking about this and reflecting on it, that, and we revisited, when did you first come out? When did you come out to your family? When did you come out to, what was the process of that? Because it's multi-layered. It's, you don't just come out once, right? You come out all
Yes.
the time
Yes.
in different ways. And we agreed and thought that when we would come out to our families, we would expect it. They're,
Mhm.
they're not going to
Yeah, of
take
course.
us very well,
Right.
probably. But like Jon said, when we started reflecting on leaving active ministry, we did not expect that kind of rejection
Yeah.
Right.
at all. And the other thing is, for those who are listening and watching who may not be Catholic or have a Catholic background, when you're an ordained priest in the Catholic priesthood, the part of the theology is this fraternity of brother priests. You're a priest forever. So it's like, you're always part of this club. You're always part of it. Oh, wait. Unless you leave,
Yeah.
then you're anathema. Then you're no longer, the phone calls stop. The support stops.
Right.
The contact stops. And that was like, what the?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I was taught in theology and in the seminary that you were always a priest and you were always supported, and but when did that change?
Yeah.
But I think what that rejection did, the rejection of us after we left the ministry, what it did was it exposed a deeper, more nuanced, more complicated rejection that we had been experiencing all along but didn't realize. So, as an example, in Cliff's experience, it was what we refer to now as the drunken email. In my experience, it's what I refer to as microaggression. And both of these things had an effect on us that was much longer lasting than we had realized at the time. So I'll let Cliff speak to the drunken email, but in my case, when I first came out to my family, before I was ordained a priest, but while I was in the seminary, it seemed acceptable for me to announce to them that I was gay because, as far as they were concerned, I was committing myself to a life of celibacy as a Catholic priest, and therefore it wasn't really an issue. It was just a part of who I was. And everybody was very accepting, and there was no rejection. There were a lot of microaggressions along the way, a lot of comments that were made, a lot of stereotypes that were surfaced, in ordinary conversation that eroded, my self-confidence and my sense of self-worth, which is exactly what microaggression does. And because it's microaggression, it's not really something that people are consciously aware of. It's just part of the culture.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until much later that I began to realize the toll that had taken on my psyche. All of the years of enduring microaggression and all of the comments and all of the side conversations. And I had even participated in that to some degree myself by thinking that if I were to break the ice, if I were to say something to kind of set people at ease, if I were to play into the gay stereotype in typical conversation, that would somehow make me more acceptable to people. That would be a way of avoiding rejection. If I were to just simply, preempt the rejection by first of all rejecting myself. All of this was a very nuanced and complicated form of rejection that preceded this rejection that I felt when I announced that I was leaving the active ministry as a priest.
So, John, when did you realize you were even gay? Like, how old were you?
Oh, for God's sake, I was 6 years old.
Oh,
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And I just remember at the time, as a very young boy, I was not at all interested in girls. I was always interested in boys. I was telling Cliff even yesterday that in the second grade, I had a crush on this boy in my second grade class. His name was Stefan, and he was blonde and blue-eyed, and he was just wonderful. And I still remember him.
I was going to say, he sounds dreamy.
I mean, what kind of,
with long hair on the
You're
beginning.
7 years old, and there's a kid named Stefan, and he's got blonde curly hair, and he's blue. And I wasn't interested in the girls in my class. I was interested in Stefan. And so
So funny that you remember his name and exactly.
I remember his last name too, but I'm not
The
using it
details,
here
too.
to protect his identity. I have done a Google search, and I did look on Facebook.
That's a different show.
That's a different show.
Yeah.
In any event, I mean,
I use that against him too, because they're like, well, I'm no Stefan.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's all right. Cliff got in trouble once for saying that he liked Hispanic men, and when we first got together, my mom said to him, "He does know that you're not Hispanic," and I said, "Oh, I think he does."
Oh boy.
Anyway, so
Sorry,
I mean,
everyone.
even as far back as when I was just a kid, 6 or 7 years old, I knew that I was different, that I liked boys, I didn't like girls, and it was around that time that my mother shamed me for playing with myself. I remember that term. He was playing with himself in the bathroom. And, when you have those early deformative experiences around sexuality and sexual identity, they just stay with you forever. I'm 50. I'll be 58 years old on April 17th. So it's coming up. I'll be 58 years old when this comes out. And, for more than 50 years of my life, I have had to deal with the shame of being gay, of being rejected, of being marginalized, of being, stereotyped. And there is a cumulative effect to that. And I can only tell you that it became very crystal clear to me when I started working at my current job, and we were invited to a company Christmas party. And Cliff and I went to this party, and I started introducing him to my colleagues at work. And I said, "And this is my Cliff."
My Cliff. Aww.
I couldn't say, "This is my partner, this is my husband."
Sure.
I just said, "This is my Cliff." It was very awkward. And finally, one of my colleagues confronted me, and she said, "Well, what is a cliff?"
I was like, am I a Pekingese? I mean, it's my Cliff.
What does that mean? I said, "Well, he's my partner." "Oh, you mean you're like married?" Yes, he's my husband. And so it took my straight allies and friends to kind of pull that out of me, and to realize that I didn't have to be ashamed of loving a man and being married to a man. It was okay.
Yeah.
If people were okay with it. But even into my 50s, I was still feeling awkward about that.
I think a lot of us in the LGBTQ plus community kind of feel the same way. Maybe not ashamed, but I try to read a room before I make certain declarations about people that I'm with or whatever. But I think that's, especially like in a corporate setting. I work in corporate America, and so I'm always very cautious on. I mean, it's obvious. Hello, you can look at me and you can say,
I was gonna say, I
that
can't
bitch
tell.
is a lesbian.
I can't tell. I can't tell.
But if nobody has seen what I look like and they're just talking to me on the phone or through email, they have no idea.
Right.
And so I think once they see me, then they know. But I do try to read a room, and I think a lot of us tend to do that because you don't know your audience everywhere you go, and you don't know how somebody's going to react. And so by you kind of saying this is my Cliff, it's like you're trying to protect yourselves and protect each other. And
You're right.
because you don't know how people are going to react, and that's sad because that's just not how it should be.
Yeah.
And it still exists for me too.
It does,
It's not something from the past. I know I still carry it because it is for safety reasons as well, and we don't want to be rejected by anybody. We don't want a scene. We just want to be. We're here to be. Just like everybody else.
Well, the interesting thing for us is that we've been together for 20 years, which is longer than any single relationship in my immediate family.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
My mother was married and divorced 7 times.
Oh my.
Wow.
My sister has been married and divorced 8 times.
Oh my God. I would just give up.
My
There was like
brother
a competition.
has been married and divorced 4 times.
Oh.
Wow.
And so, everyone in my immediate family, their relationships have been, their straight relationships have not been long-lived.
Right.
And we have, one of the longest relationships in my immediate family, and, it was supposed to have been an aberration, an insult to straight relationships. The 2 men would get married.
Yeah. Well, Cliff, so definitely want to go back to you too
Sure.
about, when you came out before we even start going into how y'all met. Because
Okay.
that's the, that's the cream of the crop how y'all met. So
Okay, so how I came out?
yes.
Yeah, how,
Okay.
How old
Yeah.
were you?
Yeah, it's
When
it's
did you
kind of
know?
a funny story.
Did you have a Stefan too?
I did not.
Okay.
No.
What was his name?
I had a Juan.
Oh, Juan.
One.
My Mexican boy. Sorry. We'll edit that out. So I think when I was about 7, that there was just a difference. I didn't have the language about what that was.
Right.
I knew that I liked boys, but it wasn't in a sexual way. It was just sort of that was just the gravitation I took with that. But I was also in a family dynamic that it was very, very Southern. So everybody was very, congenial, it was very nice, you just don't talk about things like that.
Right.
That sort of thing. So when I was ready to come out to my family, and we were talking about this last night, I'm a veteran, and so I did some of my military training in Rhode Island, and my sister, I'm the youngest of 4, so my sister, my nephew, his girlfriend, and my sister's boyfriend at the time were in New York City, just on vacation, and they invited me to come visit because it was close enough to where I could drive, and I drove from Texas to New York, and then Rhode Island, and Rhode Island to New York. And so I decided to come out to my sister at that time. It was the first time I ever spoke the words. And I hemmed and hawed about it, and I told her that it was very important. I really needed to talk to her about something very, very sensitive, and went on and on and on. It was a little clinical, and I said, well, I need to tell you, I'm a homosexual. And she's like, oh, and I hate to say this because she, for whatever reason, and I trained her to stop doing this, by the way, but she would call me Bubba.
Okay.
Oh, Bubba. And I'm like, oh God, please stop saying that. And she's like, oh, we love you, and we knew, and it was your time. We had to wait for you to do this and all that. And so it was a big relief of that. And then later during that same weekend, we went kind of visiting and roaming, and we did a little jog through Central Park, and we both started looking at like the same guys. and I said, oh, we had the same taste in men, I guess. That. Well, I told my other sister in a very similar way, and we were driving at the time, very same circumstance, and I said the same thing, I'm a homosexual. And she's
I don't know why that's so funny.
I know, and she's like,
because it's like all the things that you don't want to tell people. I have cancer.
Yeah, I mean, it's they don't want to hear that. It's not the first thing they want to hear.
I'm homosexual.
He's the H word. So, and she was much more
cloaked in shame. It's just cloaked in shame. Am I right?
She's much more abrupt. So she was like, yeah. And I'm like, well, did you know already? She's like, yeah. I said, well, how long have you known?
Why didn't you tell me?
Since you were born.
Oh my
gosh.
Bitch.
So was it like, I feel like with that many siblings, they're all like having a conversation like, I think Cliff is gay.
Yeah.
He's the H word.
He's the H word. Yeah.
Well, that's how I came out to my family when I was 20. I was at home I was home from college, and we were having a cookout, and so the family was gathered in the backyard, and I went into the kitchen for some iced tea, and my mom came in, and she said, your brother wants to know, are you gay? And I was like, why is it important for you to know? And she said, well, I'm your mother, I think I should know. And I was like, well, yes. So she leaned her head out the back door, whole family gathered in the backyard.
Oh God.
She leans her head out the back door, and she says, he is!
All been talking about it.
Of course.
That's
That
hilarious.
is too much. Cliff, when I first met you, I didn't know. You know, I knew you were military, and that was the last thing I expected because he was the first one I met. You know, when I was gonna hang out at his Airstream later, you know, me and my friend, it was not the thing I expected to also meet Jon, and because as soon as I saw Jon, I was like, oh, yeah. Now it makes sense. You know?
Now, was it me or was it the 5 Chihuahuas?
Well, it was everything. I mean, your Airstream was immaculate. You know, on top of that, you know, just yeah. And then the way you presented dinner, I was like, oh yes, I know where I'm at. I'm at home.
There you are.
So Cliff, let me ask you this: since you met Tally first, and Tally met Cliff first. Did you know she was gay? Did you know she was homosexual?
It was her haircut.
It was sticking up that day.
I'm
You know,
sure.
Wendy.
It
You know.
was quite coiffed.
Yeah, exactly. We'll call
There
it
was
that.
a lot of product.
Well,
For a
and
camp out. Yeah.
somewhat seriously, you know, speaking, I think there's a vibe. I mean,
Totally.
I think that we all called the gaydar, right?
Yeah.
But I think
I didn't
there's
have
a
the
vibe.
gaydar with you. I'm telling you. I mean, I saw
Well,
a military flag, and it made me nervous.
You're not the only one,
I know,
and it's
I'm
kind of
nervous.
funny that you say that because
It is.
as part of our ministry training in the Catholic Church, we had to spend a year in what we call
Clinical pastoral education.
clinical pastoral education, which is in a hospital.
Mm.
And so I was at Methodist Hospital in Dallas, and our director, or not director, but our immediate supervisor is gay.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to progress in her program to advance in her position in this hospital ministry program. She had to do a study and a paper, and she was basically getting her degree and such in that. And so she chose a few of us to be kind of case studies. You know, it's like here are the folks that I'm training, and this is what they're doing. She chose me because she thought I was the straight one.
Yeah.
You know, and then she did her whole program, and then I came out,
Yeah.
and then she realized, she's like, well, what the hell? You are like my straight guy in the study, you know. I was like, well, sorry.
Well, another thing about that is that the first signal that you had that Cliff might be straight was the fact that we were displaying the American flag and the Marine Corps flag.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I have to tell you that, you know, we do a lot of camping. We go every weekend, and we spend several weeks a year on the road at longer campouts. We always display our flags because we're very proud Americans, and
Sure.
Cliff is a very proud veteran,
Right.
right? And there seems to be, you talk about rejection, there seems to be this attitude among some people that only straight Republicans can display the American flag or the Marine Corps flag.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you're displaying those flags, then you must be straight and you must be Republican.
I can see that.
And
I mean,
we have deliberately fought against that.
Yeah.
We display those flags because we want to know that you can be gay and you can be a Democrat and you can be a proud American and you can be a proud Marine
veteran.
Corps veteran.
Yeah. I
Just
love it.
you know, and we want people to know that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And don't assume, don't stereotype us, don't do the microaggression
Yeah.
of just assuming that because we have that displayed, well, we must be one thing or another. No, we're here to surprise you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I still showed
like it.
up. You know, I still came over, and you
Yeah.
know, I was like, you know, you felt, you know, it felt like it was going to be a safe place. I'm just like, you know,
Right.
I do worry about that. You know,
Sure.
we're just, you know, me and my friend hanging out there. We got to be careful. You know, we're out camping. You know, and
I think that's a lot. I feel like we've talked about this before, and I think a lot of us feel the same way in the community, where we have to, you know, you're kind of on edge a little bit
Mhm.
more, and you have to, you know, protect yourself in a different way, and not just, you know, like a physical protection, but, you know, emotional protection from
hmm
the outside world. And I think a lot of people take the ease of not having to do that for granted.
right.
You know, and I'm talking about the
Definitely.
heterosexual couples. I'm talking
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that's just
Yeah. There's
sucks.
Well, and the interesting thing too is that, and this has been a long, age-old issue and study and all that, when we're looking at rejection or judgment, people of color are going, I mean, you can't deny it. It's like, I'm a black person, or I'm like Hispanic, or I'm Asian, or I'm a person of color, so there could be a level of judgment, or,
those unconscious bias.
Those unconscious bias. But with the LGBTQ community, you don't, because you don't know. I mean, if we were all green, then you would know, right? But when we come across those, like Josh says, microaggressions, those statements, it's like, oh, well, you guys, did you see the latest, musical? No? What is, well, but you're gay. I thought you all went to musicals. Or things like that. And it's like, no.
You like baseball? Yes.
Yeah, you like baseball. You like
Well,
sports.
it's like not every lesbian plays softball.
Right.
Or soccer. Yeah, not every lesbian.
I didn't know that.
Or you have a Home Depot account, or whatever. I mean, that's just.
I got one of those.
Well, I did
Home
too.
Depot account.
But
And a Lowe's.
So.
Well, and I think that speaks to a larger issue for the gay community, and that is, it's not monolithic. We don't really have like a representative, who represents the entire community. We're diverse.
Yeah.
We have a big umbrella. We have a big tent. A lot of people are under the tent, so to speak. And so, I'd like to say, well, Pete Buttigieg is our representative. He's the highest ranking, openly gay person in the government, but he's not. I mean, there's a lot of people within the LGBTQ community that he doesn't represent, right? And so we really don't have anybody that we can look to, who we can say, well, you're our leader. We're gonna trust you to represent our interests. No, we're not monolithic.
But I wonder, sort of pivoting on this theme a little bit, there are also, I think we have to agree that there's rejection also from our own tribe.
Yes.
That if we're not playing into the stereotype, or we're not playing in, or whatever the case may be.
Like musicals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I can speak to that. When we first got married, we went to Canada to get married in 2004. And the only reason we went, there were two reasons we went there. First of all, they had gay marriage, and secondly, I had vacation time that I had to use before.
Both good
Go get married.
That I had to use before the end of the year, right? And so we decided, well, let's just go off to.
Sounds extra special.
And so we didn't know, well, should we go to Toronto or should we go to Vancouver? And we decided to go to Vancouver because we could get a marriage license on the weekend. In Toronto, you could only get a marriage license during the week. So all of this stuff played into our decision to jet off to Vancouver and get married in 2014. And, when we got back, we were like, well, we're legally married somewhere on the planet.
Yeah.
And so we were satisfied with that. Well, before gay marriage was legalized here in the United States, we had friends who every time a state would legalize gay marriage, they would go to that state and get married again.
Oh my gosh.
Marriage is legal in Massachusetts. Let's go get married in Massachusetts. Oh, marriage is legal in Hawaii. Let's go get married in Hawaii. Marriage is legal in Iowa. Let's go to Iowa. And so we were of the mindset, well, we've already gotten married. It's already legal. We're not going to go off and have it validated by doing it all over again in every state where it gets. And then, of course, when marriage was legalized in the United States, there was a recognition that if you had been previously married in any other jurisdiction where it was legally recognized, then it was considered legally recognized in the United States. And so we didn't have to get remarried in the United States.
Yeah.
Well, we had friends, gay friends, who could not understand why we wouldn't want to have a gay marriage in the United States. And we were like, but we're already married. We don't need.
It's like
about
heterosexual
you guys.
couples that go to Mexico and get married.
Exactly.
They don't come back and get remarried in the U.S. They're just married.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but so
So why is there like this stigmatism between, but you're gay and you have to get remarried because you're gay and now it's legal?
Well,
And
they,
so
they
this
missed out
speaks-
on an opportunity to go to a gay wedding. I mean, if you think
But
about
see,
it.
this
Yes.
speaks to This speaks to Cliff's point about how there's even rejection within the tribe.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
don't do things that the tribe thinks that you should do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
But-
get that.
But I don't understand who designates
They're
what
like,
the
who's making the rules?
who designates what the tribe
There is
thinks.
a rule.
Yeah, doesn't TikTok designate that?
I have no
Facebook
idea
or
what
Yeah.
something like that, you know? No,
I'd
but
like to know who makes the rules too, though. If anybody knows.
yeah, let
us know.
Let us know. We're just interested, not that we're gonna follow.
Yeah, we're not gonna follow the rules, but we'd like to know who's making them.
That's right.
So that when we break them, we
I
can do it
know.
deliberately,
Yeah, exactly.
consciously.
So guys, you got to share your story about how you met.
Yes.
Everybody's waiting, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, we got to step back.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about how y'all were Catholic priests,
Yeah.
and we haven't mentioned how you guys actually met each other.
Well, we met through a priest support group, oddly enough. So I had decided to take a leave of absence from active ministry, from my Catholic diocese. And I came here to Dallas to take a position at a Catholic book publishing company. And the condition of my being here and being supported by my diocese was that I would participate in a priest support group to, help me in my transition, to determine whether I wanted to return to active ministry or whether I wanted to leave the active ministry permanently. And so I got involved in a local priest support group, and I went to a couple of meetings of these priests who had gathered together to, just be mutually supportive. And there was all this conversation about, you need to meet Cliff. Cliff isn't here this time, but he'll be here next time, and you really need to meet Cliff. Oh, we think you'll like Cliff. Well, Cliff never came. He was just this elusive figure, and Cliff's been really, he's lost a lot of weight. He's been doing a lot of weightlifting, and you should see it. Cliff now, Cliff's really, toned up. He's really, made
This
it.
is a priesthood support group.
The priest support group. Got to meet Cliff.
Okay.
Well, so finally, I met Cliff. Not at the priest support group, but by another member of the priest support group who decided to set us up for dinner
Oh wow.
at his house.
Interesting.
And so we both met, and we had dinner at this priest's house, and we hit it off. And a month later, we went on our first date, which was to a Rangers baseball game, July
Nice.
the 4th,
Yeah, go Rangers.
2001.
I love it.
Okay, so here's where I'm coming. So
The elusive Cliff.
yeah. So it was the same thing, I was also trying to balance and figure out, how do I balance my feelings and my sexuality and staying within the priesthood, and my pastor at the church I was at, who was my supervisor, was very supportive. And he said, there are some support groups, there are some ways to just sort of, and so that's how I got involved with this support group that John's talking about. And after we met and after the dinner and so forth, a parishioner gave me 2 tickets to a Rangers game,
Very nice.
but at the time I was like, oh,
Who are the Rangers?
thanks.
Can I have tickets to a musical?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to get tickets for a musical.
That's
I know
right.
that.
I mean, come on, So I called John, and I'm like, because I don't want to. What do I do with this?
Yeah.
I don't want to give it back. So I called John, and I said, well, I got these 2 tickets to a Rangers game. Would you like to go? He's like, yeah, that'd be great. I should. It was on the 4th of July.
Nice. Those are the best games
Fireworks.
You're right.
Fireworks. Yeah.
Exactly right.
And it was really great.
Yeah.
Without sounding hokey, there were fireworks, and there were fireworks,
to go to. Nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
and there was a full moon.
Ooh.
You
So
go, John.
Everything lined
Stars
together.
aligned.
Yeah.
Well, it scared the hell out of me because I really had to make a decision, and I felt that I had to make a decision that night. So we stayed for the game, we stayed for the fireworks and all that, and so we
stayed for the fireworks.
Yeah. And so we were driving back, and I was going back toward Garland, and John was going back toward
Rockwall.
Rockwall. And I don't know what highway or freeway system we necessarily were on, but there was a split because we would, and I said, that's it. Once we take our turns away from each other on the freeway, I'm going to call it off.
Wow.
You know, or am I?
Yeah.
And we got to that point, and I swear it was at the very last second to make the turn, I swerved. And I followed him, I flagged him down, I flashed my lights.
Because this is 2001, so you probably didn't have cell phones.
No, I didn't have
Like the
something.
brick, like in the glove
Exactly, I
box.
couldn't
Yeah.
text him or anything like that.
Yeah.
He pulled over, he was like, what? And I just collapsed. And just cried, and I said, I can't lose you, we can't let this in, we've got to let this go. So, thanks.
Well, you got me, so thanks a lot, Cliff.
I mean, we were there on the side of the highway. Cars
We're on
were
the side of the
zooming
highway.
by. You know,
And it just,
I'm like, what is this crazy guy doing? You know, he's flashing me down. He's causing me to pull over, and then he gets out of his vehicle and he just collapses into my arms, sobbing. And because it was such a life-changing decision, I mean, both of us had lived a full life before we ever met. And we were on a trajectory for the rest of our lives. And so at that moment, when we both decided that we wanted to start something completely different, a life together, a life apart from the ministry. I mean, we had both spent years in the seminary and in the ministry, and to suddenly just decide at that instant that we were going to do something completely different. We had no roadmap. We didn't know where we were going or how we were going to get there. We only knew that we believed there was something there worth pursuing.
Yeah.
It was life changing. It was a life changing moment on
I'm
the
sure.
side of the
I mean,
road.
you devoted your life up to this point to the church, and then
Yeah.
fireworks happen, and
Right.
you're
We
swerving.
never
into
looked
other-
back.
Yeah.
We've had problems, we've had arguments, we talk about this, and, you know, and that's a whole another dynamic, you know, on what keeps you going, what
Yeah.
keeps you,
Yeah.
what's your North Star, you know. Never look back.
Yeah. I mean, any relationship, whether you're intimate or not, you're going to have times. You're going to have moments and things like that. And you guys, I just the time I was with y'all that evening for hours, you know, we were able to enjoy each other's company for hours. I just love the way y'all work together. You know, you both have your role, even when we were there. You know, and it's just harmonic. You know, just to see you basically in your element, because camping is your element. I mean, y'all even blog, you know, about it. It's a big deal for what y'all are doing, and you want to share that experience with others too.
Well, I think you probably know that successful relationships are based on negotiation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're a negotiation. They're a dance. You're constantly learning new steps. You know, occasionally you'll step on each other's toes. You've got to, you know, sometimes you have to, you know, learn a completely different dance because the one you were doing isn't working anymore. But it's all about the art of negotiation. And we've certainly done that over time. I mean, we've carved out for ourselves roles within the relationship. They're not set in stone. You know, Cliff likes to cook and I like to be a sous chef. You know, Cliff likes to make a mess and I like to clean.
Lucky. You're so lucky, Cliff.
Cliff takes the trash out and I do the laundry. Cliff feeds the dogs and I, you know, take care of the kitchen, whatever. I mean, we each have roles that we have kind of gravitated toward and fallen into, and it doesn't mean that that's exclusively our responsibility. It just means that, you know, that's our expectation, that we're going to take care of these things. We each have a certain things that we do. You know, when Cliff is sick, I'll feed the dogs. I know how to do that. You know, if I need to make him something, you know, a quick supper, I can do that. It's not like I said. It's not like these roles are set in stone. It's just that we've negotiated this part of our relationship where this is primarily where we feel comfortable coexisting.
It sounds like it's 50-50 and it's give and take, and somebody picks up the slack when the other one is unable to, and I think that's important in any healthy relationship.
And I have to say that the pandemic has really brought all of this into sharper focus for us. I mean, we have essentially been locked down for well over a year, and we both worked from home. We have been with each other exclusively, you know, for well over a year. We've rarely ventured outside our bubble, and for some couples that has introduced a strain in their relationship. They're together apart. But for us, it has really brought us closer together. I mean, we really do recognize how much we rely on each other, how much we need each other, how much we want to be with each other. You know, it has revealed to us a level of intimacy in our relationship that we didn't think was possible, and that we're very grateful that we have. And you know, so for us, the pandemic has been a blessing. In disguise. It really has given us an opportunity to observe one another at a level that we could never have done before. For example, Cliff was working from home and I was working from my workplace, and I didn't really know what he did. I knew what he told me he did. He didn't really know what I did. He knew what I told him I did. But when we started working in the same building at the same time, and he could hear me on the phone, and he could hear me in teleconferences, and he could hear me on Zoom calls, and I could hear him talking to his colleagues and interacting with his clients, I just gained an entirely new respect for him. Because I had the opportunity to really see him in action. And he wasn't putting on anything for me. I was just able to observe and appreciate him in a whole different way. And the same way with him. And we've had so many conversations about our interactions with our colleagues, and we would never have had that opportunity to learn that about each other had it not been for the pandemic that brought us together and forced us into the same workspace.
That's really great to hear. I like hearing that. Because you do hear a lot of couples that are, you know, we're forced to be at home, and they're just like, oh my God, I hate my spouse. Like, I gotta leave. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, what's going on? But then you get this other side of the spectrum where it's like, you know, up the ante for you guys, it sounds like.
It has. It's worked really great. And just when we have breaks, and I hear this from my colleagues, that where they have missed that sort of the water cooler conversations, and we'll do that. So when he is off the phone and I'm off the phone, I'll step into like my little office areas in our den, and his office areas in our bedroom, and so I'll step in and we'll talk to each other like, how's your morning, what's going on, or I'll say, man, I heard your conversation, it was really tense, you know, what's you okay, so we'll check in with things like that, and be able to process those experiences. We can have lunch together, we have dinner together, and for the entire time of our relationship, one of the not secrets, but one of the things that has really been, that really makes it work, I guess, a few things. One is, you know, just this open communication and ability to talk about stuff.
Right.
But we have made a commitment that we will always have a formal meal together, where we sit down, if that's going to be lunch or that's going to be dinner. And we have a happy hour, or we have a cocktail, so we'll watch the news. I'll put a little tray together. We'll have drinks or cocktails, like you saw.
I was gonna say, Allie, when they're saying all this,
that's so awesome.
You haven't seen the plates though. Like they get put on Facebook, and my mouth is watering.
Yeah.
Like it's just a beautiful looking plate. It's a production.
Like
it's
a
art.
plate, like
It's
a
art.
board.
It's art.
Well,
like a charcuterie board.
Like a charcuterie board, right?
Yeah.
But it introduces. We don't do it to be cutesy or anything, but and especially now with the pandemic, we really introduce it and use it as a sense of just civility. It's like, this is just something that's just. We're not talking about the, you know, the Chauvin trial. We're not talking about, you know, this interruption. We're not talking about the pandemic. We're not talking about Trump. We're not talking about this. it's just us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, and what Cliff is speaking to, I think, is important for us, and that is that we really we place a high value on routine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for some couples, they would find that to be utterly stifling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they want the excitement of spontaneity,
Yeah.
right?
That's good.
But Cliff and I both thrive on routine.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Cliff went into the military. That's why I went into the monastery.
Yeah.
Because we both love routine, and that stems from the fact that we both had childhoods that were remarkably unstable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as I mentioned, my mother was married and divorced 7 times. I went to 8 grade schools in 8 different years. When you have that kind of instability as a child, what you long for as an adult is something that's stable, that's reliable, that's routine, something you can count on. Same way with Cliff. Cliff had the same kind of instability in his own childhood, this fear of abandonment, this sense of loss. And so when we got together as adults, we were like, well, one thing we want to do is just establish a routine that we can count on.
Yeah.
And we want to count on each other. And so we thrive on that. That's what helps make our relationship a success. Other couples would hate that, and we get it. You have to know what you're about,
Right, right.
right? So if you're, one time we had friends over on a Wednesday night, and they said to us, well, what are you guys doing on Saturday evening? And we were like, I'm sorry, we've got plans. And they looked at us and they were like, oh, that's right, you guys plan ahead. And we're like, it's not that far ahead.
I'm a planner.
You know.
I totally get that.
Totally
So,
schedule
yeah.
that.
They weren't into planning ahead. That's okay. We
Yeah.
were,
Yeah.
and that's
I
okay
need like a
too.
week's notice if anybody wants to hang out.
At
Like,
least.
I need at least a week. Yeah.
Well, and we're not slaves to that. I mean, and I was talking to my manager yesterday, and she's part of our team, but she was just promoted to being a manager. And she said, you know, what do you need from me, and what would you like? How can I help you to be successful in what you're doing and things like that? And we had a great conversation. I said, you know, I really strive on structure.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we talked about that a little bit, but we're not slaves to it. So when things happen, we're nimble enough. Like traveling, you know,
Right,
I do all the scheduling. So like where we're going to stay, where we're going to go, what's going to happen. You know, and that's what we did. And one quick anecdote to that: one of our first trips, we were going to California, and where were we going? That first trip, Yosemite, I think. And so I thought, well, let's stay at this place called the Calico Ghost Ranch.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah.
I don't know about that.
And so we just had our first iPhone, and so we plugged it in, and we're traveling. We get there, we're going down this 1-lane dirt road, and I'm following the red dot on the
dark.
GPS, totally dark, not
It was
knowing
like 10
exactly where we're
o'clock at
going.
night.
And it gets later and later, and it's like, you know, and I'm trying to, John's driving, I'm trying to be the navigator, and we keep passing like the red dot, the destination on the phone. So he's got to like maneuver, and he's got to like turn the. We had a different Airstream at the time,
Okay.
a smaller one, but you know, and you may have to bleep this out, but we kept going back and forth. I'm like, he's like, how far is it? How much more are we going to go? And I said, it's right there. It's almost there. I'm like, there's the red dot. Here's the red dot. He's like, fuck the red dot. We're going back to the freeway. So we went back to like I-5, and right overhead was this big flag of
A KOA.
KOA.
Oh man.
You know.
Light shining down from
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're nimble enough to do that, and we allow each other our freedom, you know, to do things that we want to do individually. Like I like Star Trek, you know, so I'll watch that at night, and so if I'm a little still awake and John's asleep, he's like, well, I don't care what you do. He's like, 2 things that will put me to sleep: watching Star Trek and praying the rosary. I'm out like I like. You know, I don't care what you do.
I'm out like a light.
That's cute. That's cute. I love it.
That's awesome.
Well, so guys, y'all been together a very long time. You know, as you look back at your relationship. Is there anything y'all would do differently that you want to bring up today, or?
Well, I've lately been a fan of Adam Grant. Are you familiar with him?
Yes.
So he is a psychologist and an author, and I've really come to appreciate a lot of his insights. And one of the things that he talks about is that if the conversation that you're having with other people is based on whether you're a politician or a preacher or a prosecutor, you're likely not going to succeed. A preacher is trying to evangelize you to that person's position. Mm-hmm. A politician is going to try to align with that person's tribe, whatever it is, so that they can have acceptance. A prosecutor is trying to convince you of the rightness of their argument. And so the approach that he takes to relationships is more like a scientist, where, if you're having a dispute about something, you'll simply present it as a hypothesis. You'll hypothesize about what a possible response could be. And what that means is that you're open to to input and to questioning. You're not trying to solidify a response. You're just simply exploring, possibilities. That's how scientists approach things. And so I think if I could go back and change anything about our relationship, it would be all the times that Cliff and I have come to loggerheads because one of us had been preaching or politicizing or prosecuting a case, rather than looking at something from the perspective of a scientist, where we would just simply explore what this means for us, or how what kind of a solution there might be. Whenever we have approached a problem like a preacher, a politician, or a prosecutor, invariably we end up at loggerheads. So throughout the years, if we could have just approached things more like a scientist, I think we would have had a much better time of things than all those times when we've come to loggerheads. Yeah. So that's one thing I would change. It's just how I approach my basic way of relating.
Right.
Not only with Cliff, but with everyone in my life.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice,
Definitely.
in any situation.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, and there's a difference also, to dovetail all that, and we talked about this last night, between a growth mindset and a set mindset. And that set mindset is like, and I told John, I said, the perfect example of happy memory is Prince Philip, who just died. And he was interviewed about some of the gaffes he had spoken, and his response was, well, this is who I am. I'm not going to change my thoughts. This is who I am, and that's why I've been grown to be, and you'll accept me who I am, and that's it. There's no more that you can't change me. Kind of idea, and that's a set mindset. It's like, I'm not going to grow. A growth mindset is you're open to change. I could be something else, and maybe you end your statement with the word yet. Can you program in Python? Language, software language. No, I can't yet. Yeah. But maybe I can if I'm open to it. I can learn it, and I can be different, things like that. I would have to answer your question by saying that I don't think I would change anything. I mean, there are things that I don't like, that I definitely would not have liked to encounter, but we wouldn't be who we are, if we changed those things. We've had arguments, and we've had some really, downright, nasty verbal fights. And it's 20 years, and things like that. And I hated that. I hated the way I felt. I hated the way I said things. John is the same, but we grow a little bit from that. And that's one of the strengths we have too, is that we'll have those, and then it might be the next day, but we'll come back and say, and talk about it and say, this is why he said that, this is why I think I was wrong, or this is why I think I was right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I might come back, or John might come back to say, this is what I heard you say. So this is how I felt when you said that.
Yeah.
It might not have been what you meant, but this is how it impacted how I feel.
Right.
Well, and I guess if you want to bring this back full circle, it really does come back to rejection. And that is that both of us have experienced in a profound way a sense of rejection, personal rejection, professional rejection, spiritual rejection. We've both experienced this in such a profound way that as people in relationship, we want to work against that. We want to ensure that we provide for one another a place where there is no rejection, where there's ultimate acceptance, a place where we can feel safe with each other, where even if we have conflict, we will resolve the conflict because we reject rejection.
So yeah, that makes sense. But where is this place? I mean, just in life, everywhere, you're exposed. Everywhere you're exposed. You don't know, and that sounds beautiful. It sounds amazing. It sounds easy. Because I always say, life isn't hard. We make it harder than what it needs to be. The people do, and. I applaud you guys. I'm so appreciative that y'all took the time, and I feel blessed that I came across you guys as well too, and we're able to spend some time to get to know y'all a little bit more personally, because your story is fascinating.
Yeah.
And
I feel like we've just barely touched the tip of the iceberg.
We come back for part 2.
Yeah, we'd love to have.
Now that we know how to get to your
point.
point.
There's so much just insightful knowledge that you can give us, especially being together for so long and navigating, the world the way you guys did.
You're the first gay man on our show, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
I forgot to say that at the beginning.
Oh,
so.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's funny because at first I was like, why do they want us on a lesbian show?
It's not just the lesbians.
Did they not know that we're gay?
We just know we're lesbians.
Yeah. We got a lot of lesbian stories.
Yeah.
And I said it like my mom said, does he not know that you're not Hispanic? Yes, Mom, he knows I'm not Hispanic.
Well, I thought you were going to talk about when you told your mom we were getting married, and her response.
Her response was, which one is the bride and which one is the groom?
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm really
That's
glad
such a
that you said that,
microaggressive
because here's the thing. As lesbians, when you're in a relationship with somebody, you always get the question, well, who's the guy?
Yes.
And earlier when y'all were talking, I was going to interrupt and be like, okay, I need to know who's the woman. Because we get that question all the time, and I don't mean that in a serious way.
Yeah.
I'm not, but y'all were talking about roles and how,
Exactly.
you'll do the cooking, you'll do the cleaning, and blah, 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 and I was like,
Well, I mean, somebody's got to cook, somebody's got to clean. And
yeah, but I think this is where people really just, they just make me so mad because they have to label everything.
Exactly.
Well, that's
They have
the
to
only
label
way
or
they see
put it.
it is a black and white thing.
And it's just not like
That's
that.
that-
You guys,
masculine.
yeah.
That's the fixed mindset.
Even
Yeah.
those
It has to be
assumptions,
this way.
though, are based on stereotypes.
Exactly.
And stereotypes
Yes.
for straight men and women,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? So even that's based on a stereotype.
Exactly.
And we hadn't talked about the drunken email, but I wanted to at least mention it here at the end. Even though Cliff's family said that they accepted him and they celebrated him, oh, it's great that you're gay and blah, blah, blah. We got a drunken email one night from one of Cliff's siblings, and in it,
Bubba.
Yeah.
The Bubba sister.
She
Bubba.
She said, we're sick to death of you pushing your lifestyle in our face. And of course, we looked at that and we're like, I don't understand what that means. I mean, we're never openly affectionate. We have no public
You're like
displays of
wearing
affection.
a pride flag as a cape? Like,
No, like nothing. It was just a map.
And it's sad to hear you're not openly affectionate. I just have to say that because that needs to be called out.
It does need to be called out, but we feel very uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, we do, and let me say a couple things real quick. the drunken email was based on, I think, when we announced our marriage, because we're going to Vancouver, and it's like the good thing about that is that we knew that our families wouldn't come follow us.
Yeah.
It was like, we're so sorry you can't attend.
Right.
But, you know, it was like, and so that's all we said. It was totally benign.
Yeah.
And so we got this response from my sister, and she was like, oh, you know, I'm so happy for you, and blah, 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 but I have to be honest and let you know that, you know, we don't appreciate you throwing your lifestyle in our face. And we're like, what the F are you talking about? I mean, how did we do that? And so that's always laced the whole thing. It's like, you know, so even though she may come around still to talk about that, it's like, oh, I just love y'all. And so we were like, there's just that drunken email. And so it's not going to go.
I was going to ask earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt. So it sounded like your families were okay when y'all came out as gay before you left the priesthood. Is that an accurate? I feel like for Jon, maybe that was
Just
like they just seemed really accepting, and then did anything change after
John's
y'all met and?
Well, remember what I said, that that prior to that, you know, while we were going into the ministry, it was deemed acceptable because we were going to be celibate.
Exactly.
And then when we left the ministry, it kind of, you know, that took the celibacy angle off the table.
Right.
But I think all along, even though they pretended to be accepting while we were in the seminary, I think that all along there was that. That's why I said it was evidenced to be by the microaggressions. So it was as I reflect now, it's the microaggressive behavior that is revelatory, that reveals what was actually going on there. So at the surface, it seemed like they were accepting, but all the microaggressions revealed that wasn't the case. And like I said, microaggression is unconscious bias.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so clear to me that is pervasive in my family, that unconscious bias. So they're not deliberate about it. They're not mean. They're not intentional.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Yeah.
And so they can say on the surface, "Oh, we accept you," but their actual comments and everything along the way belie that. You know.
And with my family, there's a little bit, which didn't come out just yet, but there's a little bit of a nuance that I converted to Catholicism. So my family is not Catholic.
Oh, okay.
So when I decided to become Catholic and then go into the priesthood, it was like, okay, you know, they were like, oh, it's like, you know, I'm going to become a salesman and work for Ford.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So that was okay. And then when I was talking about leaving, it was the same thing. It was like, okay, not a big deal. But then when I came out to say I was gay and then getting together with Jon, then it was like, oh, wait. Whoa, wait.
Yeah.
What? You know, that kind of thing. Even though they were like, oh, we accept you, you know, we love you and all that. It's like,
Yeah.
But, you know, the drunken email.
Yeah.
So, and the one family member that did take a little difference is Catholic, and that's my sister-in-law. And she's held it against me of leaving the priesthood because she thinks that was a rejection, my rejection of the church, you know, and of all the effort that she had given, like her family had like said, well, we'll give you $20 a month kind of thing, you know, to help you during the seminary because you can't work, so this will help you buy school supplies and things like that. So she's always held that against me in that way, which makes no sense. It's like, well, that just,
I mean, does she understand that they wouldn't allow you to stay there? I mean,
well,
does she
I think
understand
I think that it really is a facade.
Okay.
I think that it's a facade for their discomfort with us being gay. I really do think that ultimately it's about being gay. It's not about being a Catholic or being a priest or being in the seminary or being in the ministry. I think ultimately, the rejection is a rejection of our being gay.
Gotcha.
And you can nuance it any way you like. You can cloak it however you like. You can clothe it however you want. But the bottom line is it really is a rejection of being gay.
Yeah. And what gives us strength against that, I think, is our being together. And it's like, I don't care what you think. Now it would have been, as we were talking about rejection and such, it would have been different if they had a stronger role in my life growing up, but they really didn't. So that's another area to where, as John said, that sense from my perspective of feeling abandoned is that I had family members who really weren't there in any way to support me or in any way of my rearing. So at this point in my adulthood, it's like, well, you were never there anyway.
Yeah.
So
true.
Yeah. Why does it matter what you think now? Yeah.
Exactly.
I get that. Just to kind of wrap us up, if you guys had advice to give to our listeners and our viewers, just about, making a successful relationship last as long as you guys have, what advice would you give everybody?
Have a good GPS and don't go to Calico Ghost Town.
Oh my gosh. Have a good GPS. Honest to God, the introduction of GPS technology has saved our relationship. You don't know how closely we came to divorce over getting lost.
Gosh. Over MapQuest and
Oh my goodness. No, my advice is that the strength of the commitment is what sustains you. I mean, I have been over time. I have been consistently amazed at Cliff's level of commitment to me. He has never wavered on his promise to me, and that has helped me to remain faithful to him. So it's the example of his commitment to me that has helped me to be committed to him. And that's everything. That commitment, that promise that we made to each other is everything. It's like I said earlier, we've both experienced rejection at such a deep level that we're absolutely determined that in our relationship there will always ultimately be acceptance, that we will not reject one another because we know how awful it is to be rejected. Yeah. And so it's the strength of that promise to one another that has sustained us.
And I totally agree with that. And again, in a lot of our conversations, it's not about sex. It's not about sexuality. And I think that unfortunately with the church and with other folks dealing with, being gay, it's always coming down to
reduced to
sex of some sort, or whatever. It is about fidelity and faithfulness, and keeping that alive, even in the most, stressful of times, and so
things are going to happen. As you get older, your body is going to change. If you're a man, your testosterone levels are going to be depleted, and you can try to do something about it, chemically or in terms of injections or whatever, but ultimately your body is going to break down. What do you have after that if you don't have a promise to one another?
Yeah.
If all you have is a physical relationship, eventually it is going to break down. That's the nature of things. And so you've got to have something left to sustain you beyond that.
Yeah.
I know that young people think that they're invincible and that they're gonna be like this forever and gay rock. But no, as you get older, your knees ache and your joints creak and your muscles sag and your flesh is not as firm as it once was and you get wrinkled and you gray hair, and I mean it's it doesn't have to be the end of the world. You can actually have something to sustain you beyond that, and that something is your commitment to one another.
I love that.
That's awesome.
I love it. There's hope.
There is.
There's hope. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But hey guys, thank you again. Appreciate you coming today, and we might go ahead and take you up on that offer to do part two. 'Cause,
Love
yeah, there's so much more about you
A
guys.
deeper
and
dive with
obviously.
Jon and Cliff.
Obviously.
That's what we'll call it.
Dive. Yeah.
And we'll wait and see what kind of response you get. If your audience demands it, if they clamor for more, we'll be back.
Well, we love you, so that's what matters too.
Well, good.
Yeah, really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much. And stay tuned. We might have Jon and Cliff back again.
That's right. And let's keep it real.
Yeah, keep it real, everybody.